Today, well, let me kind of back up and allow the Board of Selectmen to convene too, Rick. So we're going to do a joint meeting today, and we haven't really worked out the tag team aspect here, but...
We've got a nice overlap in the chair of the Board of Health. So why don't we call a meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order, and it's all turned over to you, and you can run the meeting, right?
There you go, yeah.
Thank you.
No, we don't do the pledge. It's usually just us, so we're a little puzzled.
We just do it by rote, right?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. So first item on the agenda today is concerns from the public. Are there any concerns today that are not currently on today's agenda? Seeing none. Approval of minutes, January 17th, 2012 for the Board of Health. Any comments, corrections on the minutes? Seeing none, those are approved. One board action, a signature for a loan approval for a septic loan program. Richard?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I want to note that this is indeed the first televised meeting of the Board of Health of the town of Nantucket. Hopefully, when we get the television schedule straightened out, we can have a lot more. Board actions, a signature for loan approval for septic system loan programs. We have 6 loans before us this evening for approval. One at 5 Doble Court for $28,400. One at 62 Arkansas Avenue for $31,400. One at 60 Arkansas Avenue for $31,400. One at 44 Arkansas for $29,400. One at 113 Walwinet Road for $47,000, and one at 128 for Surfside Road at $32,000, for a total this week of $200,613.62. I'm very pleased to note that we are only a couple of months into the loan program and have already awarded $368,000 in loan monies. We have $1.7 million remaining to go in the following year. Hopefully people will take advantage of this program. To that end, I'm going to pass this document along for the chairman's signature on all of the pages that are marked with an X.
Okay, do you need a vote on that, Richard? Or is
we do.
We do. So do I have a motion then to approve the loans for the septic loan program?
So moved.
All right, a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Richard, you might want to just explain the loan program.
Loan program is a program that we have entered into with the Department of Environmental Protection. There are monies available through the Wastewater Abatement Fund, and these loan monies are open to individuals who need their septic systems repaired. We are certainly giving preference to those septic systems within our harbor watershed protection districts. This loan will pay for design and construction of the system, with the proviso that the loan is paid back over 20 years at only a 2% interest to the town of Nantucket. This becomes an attachment to your tax bills. Again, not only would it pay for septic systems, it will also pay for sewer work that needs to be done on a property. It will not pay the sewer connection fees, but it will pay for any changes to the structure that needs to occur in order to connect to the sewer. This is a program that we have been anticipating for a number of years. Finally, it has come to fruition. And again, we have given away substantial funding already. It has helped any number of people actually afford to repair their septic systems.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Malcolm. It's a great idea. Presentation, next item, presentation from Woodward and Curran on proposed administrative consent order, Mattocket wastewater disposal. Rosemary, how are you?
Good. I can put this down. I'm Rosemary Blackyer from Woodward and Curran, and we've been working with Richard Ray to come up with a process where it's called an administrative consent order for those folks that have a failed Title V system or septic system on their property. If you're in an area that is proposed to have sewer sometime in the near future, this administrative consent order will afford you the ability to not have to do a major repair on your septic system, because you're going to have at some point sewer coming in and there'll be charges with that. So Richard and myself, a few other folks from town have met with the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, because this process exists right now in Provincetown, and it's been very, very successful. It allows you so that you're not paying twice for a major upgrade to your property. We were able to get a copy of the administrative consent order that the town of Provincetown is using. It was developed through in conjunction with Mass DEP and Copeland and Page, who is Provincetown's town council. It also happens to be your town council. So we've met once with town council and talked to him about this process. So it's in draft form. It's an agreement whereby if you need a major upgrade or a repair to your system, sewer is imminent, you can enter into an administrative consent order with the Board of Health. There's a legal process. It gets recorded with your deed. There is an escrow account that's required with it, and that escrow account can be used to either pay for sewer when it comes in, or if you choose at any time during the process to upgrade your Title V, then that money goes back to you. So it's almost like an annuity account that the town is collecting. So right now it's in draft form. I think it's up to the Board of Health to do a complete review of it, and that's it.
All right, any questions from the Board of Health, Rosemary, while she's here?
No.
On the administrative consent order? Comments from anyone on the nature of this? So Richard, are we going to, oh, sorry.
I guess I got some questions. Hi, thanks, I'm Scott White. I guess my question at this point, at the moment right now would be, there's definitely the draft is in front of us. When do we as a public get a comment to, is there going to be a presentation of the full proposal at some point in time that then we get an opportunity to provide public comment to, or is this our opportunity to do it right now?
Would you mean a full proposal on solutions in Mattocket, or on just this administrative consent order?
Well, the administrative, the ACO in particular,
in particular?
There would be a public hearing concerning this. Right now, the numbers that you find in that document they're not arbitrary, but they're guesstimates at this point. We have to refine those numbers based on a number of factors. Once those numbers are refined and we can come up with a definitive number that each property is going to have to pay into the escrow account, then the ACO becomes tantamount to an order to do this, and that would get passed by the Board of Health. But there would be other meetings prior to that, yes. Okay,
so right now it's probably not that meaningful at the moment then to get into some of the nuances about debating what's, we might agree with or disagree with.
Scott,
right,
this is totally introductory at the time right now.
Okay. So we'll have other opportunities to do that down the road?
Yes.
Okay.
Scott, could I just ask, is there anything we should be thinking about before a more public hearing? I don't want to start a whole hearing now, but just at a very high level.
Well, I think one thing that, I would appreciate, or that, I think ought to be complimented is the fact that either the board or whoever that's, been involved with it that has, developed an opportunity for there to be a moratorium, recognizing that if sewering is established in some of these other areas, Mattocket being one, but other areas too, that that there's the proper conditions so that a property owner is not having to pay twice. So I think that that's definitely a huge step forward. I think some of the other comments that I got a copy of the ACO, and I've spent the last couple of days kind of reviewing that and comparing that with some sort of guidance through the MEP and those kinds of things. And I certainly have comments with it, but I don't know. That's why I sort of asked that first. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring those things up.
To get into the recommended nuances of this, I think it's on the table that obviously, particularly in the Mattocket area, nutrient reduction into the harbor has got to be eliminated any way we can, or we're not going to be able to clean up Mattocket Harbor. And the options there are obviously sewer or alternative design technology. Alternative design technology certainly removes nutrient loading from many septic systems and from the soil, but it doesn't remove it all. Sewers obviously remove all of the nutrient loading. It's kind of where we're looking at right now, I believe. I think the town has to look certainly in that direction. In the interim, the ACO will place people who have a hydraulically failed system in a position where that system is going to have to be repaired. But it can be a minimal repair. It doesn't have to be Mattocket Code compliant for the time being. That's the key word, for the time being. If you have a system that is too close to groundwater but is functioning fine, We anticipated 2 or 3 years ago that we were going to have you repair those systems with some sort of immediacy. At this point now, with the ACO out there, the owner would sign the ACO with the understanding that they would not have to modify their system at this time until a definitive means of waste disposal is determined for the Mattocket Watershed Protection District and the Town Watershed Protection District also. So, essentially, if you've got a system that's backing up in your house or creating a swimming pool in your yard, you're going to have to fix it, but you're going to fix it to minimum standards with minimum expense. If you have a system that is functioning fine, is technically failed because it's too close to groundwater, we're going to allow you to leave it just like it is until this decision is decided on by the town of Nantucket.
Well, Malcolm had a question. I guess, probably, one of the things I'd be interested in to see if this is something that you might have some information on or some ideas about is, but when would this ACO go into effect, essentially? I'm aware that my understanding is that the CWMP is being updated, and that I presume that with the updating of that CMP, they're incorporating the Mass Estuaries findings as far as which watersheds or subwatersheds, are providing the nitrogen loading into the systems, and there clearly are, certainly in Mattocket, there's sub-watersheds that aren't providing anything at all that don't even need to meet TMDL standards. So I guess my question is, within that, is the ACO going into effect going to wait until the CWMP establishes areas that need or are available for, recommended for sewering? I mean, I think that it should. I mean, my feeling on that part of it is that I think it would be inappropriate for, there to be areas or somebody required to use the escrow if it ends up being that they aren't going to be available for sewering anyway. You see what I'm saying? Because there's areas clearly within Mattocket that don't need sewering. As an example. I can show you on a map.
My sense is that we're talking about failed systems, right, Richard? So that something would have to be done. Correct. Right?
Right.
So,
but there's areas within Mattocket, particularly some of the subwatersheds, that by the MEP report don't need to address the TMDL issues. They don't have a TMDL problem, a nitrogen loading problem. There's some areas that obviously do. And so my point in that a little bit is that it seems reasonable to me, at least, that the CWMP, I presume, is going to incorporate that into their findings, and that those findings are then used to decide which areas, in the Mattocket as an example, can use the escrow approach, or if there's areas that probably wouldn't be sewered in the first place, that those areas go ahead and get the sewer systems repaired and in this instance wouldn't be eligible for the escrow moratorium. That's kind of a question. The question is the ACO...
is it going to be mandatory, basically, if it, on review, we're not going to ever consider sewering whatever area you may live in, basically?
Right. I mean, is it going to be paired with the CWMP findings?
And my question, Richard, is also, does that include alternative systems? Because it may be that we do a combination, correct?
Well, yes, absolutely.
So,
I think whatever the approach is to remediation out there, the ACO, the funding that goes into the program as part of the ACO will be utilized for that. It will either pay for the cost of an alternative design system for a property, or for a sewer for the property, or a small package treatment plant, or whatever decision is determined. And those pieces of the puzzle have yet to be fit. They will come together probably within the next 12 months, but those pieces, again, you'll see some of the pieces come together at the annual town meeting when we discuss the CWMP and its revisions.
The other thing to add is, in your question about sub-areas that may not need sewers based on the MEP, the MEP is only based on nitrogen. It's not looking at any of the other pollutants, any of the other criteria that was used in the 2004 CWMP to identify areas of need, being something other than an on-site system. In the Mattocket area, we're going to take, in the CWMP update, what we propose to do is take the criteria that was used in 2004, which could be fast-perking soils, groundwater, lot size, density of systems, and we're going to add the nitrogen to that. The nitrogen piece was missing in 2004, but it's not the only piece. So the areas that were identified in the 2004 CWMP for needs may change, but they're not going to change just because of nitrogen. Nitrogen is going to add to them. So you may need sewers because of reasons other than nitrogen.
Right.
And
that will be updated.
And I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. No.
No, I was just going to add that ultimately this is really just a way of placeholder, and so that there's no penalty on you, the consumer, if we should make a decision that would affect, your recently installed septic system. So, it just buys some time.
We work in many towns where this is not available, and what happens is sewers come in and people, because of a hydraulic failure, which is a public health threat, and that's something that you usually have to fix right away, they put thousands of dollars into repairs. And then all of a sudden sewer infrastructure comes in, and whether it be paid by betterment or privilege fee or whatever, there's another huge cost that comes along. So this ACO is really developed to benefit you, the property owners, and it's a win-win in that the escrow, we are looking at an escrow that would be the cost to replace your septic system. And it would be collected over 20 years. They base it on 20 years, so your monthly cost is not hugely high. And if at any time during the process you decide you don't want to wait for the municipal sewer to come in, you want to repair your system, you submit a plan, get it approved, that money goes back to you. So it really is a win-win, and it's not asking anybody to do anything that you wouldn't benefit from, because that money is yours at any time. If you choose to take it back, you have to do the repair or whatever that was required.
Rick?
I was just trying to get a sense, Patty, for the area. In other words, is this going to apply within geographic areas? So is that the area, Richard, that you've isolated that's subject to the inspection program?
The Harbor Watershed Protection Districts,
right,
yes.
So somebody on Cliff Road that has a septic, this isn't available to them to defer a replacement cost if they had to have one for some reason, even though they're not subject to the inspection program.
Interestingly
I'm just
enough,
trying to isolate the
interestingly
impact
enough,
of this.
I went to the state and accessed $2 million for this program this year. We can go back next year and get another $2 million and keep going. Initially, when we started this program, there was no ACO. There was nothing on the horizon that looked like it could be of any great assistance to us. So we felt that most of the individuals, and we concentrated on Mattocket, in the Mattocket area, would need to have their septic systems replaced. This impetus by my department was based primarily on the want to have the Mattocket systems replaced with individuals on fixed incomes and things of that nature whose systems did not pass, and we knew that in the Mattocket area there were going to be many, many systems because of their age and their closeness to Hither Creek they wouldn't pass. So we were set to fund the repair of all those systems. Now that the ACO has arrived, and now that we have we are looking at comprehensive waste management in Mattocket, those people with the ACO are not going to be mandated to repair their system right away. Paradoxically, we have all of this money. So we are going to be looking outside of the Harbor Watershed Protection Districts and offer this money to individuals who simply need to have their system repaired. If they choose to have it repaired, that's going to be our decision. But if they need to have the system repaired, as it's failing or something, I think the Board of Health would be benevolent enough to offer them the loan program.
Right, so that's the loan program. So, but the ACO program was a little different. And so that's within the designated area, your harbor, your watershed protection area.
Yes.
And then one of the questions I've heard, I think it's good somehow to get some of these on the table, like someone who was in the program, repaired their septic system last year, so there's a timing issue for how this impacts new folks who may have delayed versus folks who did the program up front.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some equity here. I don't know how you deal with that one.
We have had conversations about, at least we did, about how we're going to handle just those kinds of things,
Yeah.
because there could be a grandfather period. I mean, once we set about, a decision in Mattocket, which I believe is the Board of, the Sewer Commissioners in terms of what we're going to do there. So that's the Board of Selectmen. Right?
That's correct.
And then how it's implemented is going to be the Board of Health. So
Once the Board of Sewer Commissioners decides what direction we're going to take with regard to wastewater disposal in the Mattocket area, then again, the Board of Health will take the lead.
Right. So as we get into questions of who pays for the sewer system, those folks who did repair their septic system, we might find a way to mitigate the cost to them compared to those who did not, where this program might apply. And I can see all kinds of gray areas. So.
Right, and that's part of the reason why we decided to do this together, because clearly, this is a first run for us, because it used to be the same individuals both deciding and implementing. So we know the communication has to happen, because it's going to be tricky. This is a great opportunity for someone today who's going to benefit from it, but you're right, last year, the year before, 5 years ago, all of it's going to be part of the challenge in terms of having something, paid for. So we are cognizant of that, for sure.
Gotcha.
That's something that the CWMP update will look at too, called institutional arrangements. And it's looking at if somebody made a repair 2 years, 3 years before sewers came in, just like you said, Patty, do you grandfather them, defer them, give them a certain usage out of that? Those are all things that have to be decided.
Right, and we heard last night from Rosemary as the Board of Selectmen that there's a couple of other issues besides the septic that would be considered, and we have the fertilizer considerations today, which is one of those, and stormwater treatment. So again, the combination of what we do first, second, and third, along with how we implement the sewer septic issue, I think is all going to require us communicating on that level too, because I'm much more comfortable grandfathering in, for instance, a hookup if we have made ground in other areas with respect to reducing
the
it.
multiple ways to make progress here.
Right.
And sort of it's a combination of all of them, maybe, and so it's a complicated issue.
Very.
But this also sets up a time frame, and it seems that maybe in some ways that's helpful, because it's going to hopefully force us to get to the end game.
I would agree. I think
later.
as a Board of Selectmen, to put that on, we really do need to make some decisions regarding Mattocket, because Mattocket needs to know what we're thinking with respect to at least a solution. How we implement it could take us a little longer in terms of conversation, but I do think that we do need to get there. But having the information from the estuaries and also the update is going to inform that. And we saw that in Monomoy, too. I mean, I was surprised to see, not to get off on a tangent with Monomoy since I've got Mattocket here, I was saying to Malcolm that we're going to select different sections of the island. We're sort of between the wind turbine and the triathlon, we've had a lot of Mattocket discussions. But, what we learned in Monomoy is that having barreled through, if we were going in that direction last year and sewering Monomoy, may not have been best or necessary.
And it emphasizes good data and information and updating the CWMP with all of that in front of us again. So.
Right. Any other comments? Dan, I think you were next, hand-wise.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I'm Dan Drake. I have a number of comments which I'll save for when we get into the specifics of this, but I would like to mention a couple of general things. One of them is that I think the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Sewer Commissioners should be looking to alternatives to the ACO. I think it's a draconian measure. It takes away any choice from the homeowner. And one of the other things that it does, the way it's currently written, is delay improvements, which will also then delay water quality improvement. And I think that's a very important consideration. Chatham, for example, we stumbled across yesterday, has a different system where they actually grandfather people who have improved their system to Title V specifications within the last 10 years. These are the things that need to be considered. I don't think we should just barrel forward with the assumption that this ACO is the only way to go. Another consideration in all of this is that, we put in the harbor watershed inspection plans for both the town and Mattocket. Some people have complied, some people haven't. The people who have complied have spent money. either just having their systems inspected or some going all the way through to the process of putting in new systems. Others have not, and there's been no mention of what, any penalties or anything for the people who have not played by the rules. Now we're talking about just extending the rules out, so those people are getting away with more murder, if you will. So I think that, these are all considerations that have to be factored in. I agree with what Chairman Atherton said a minute ago about the research. A lot of the research at least went into the estuaries program, and even the old CWMP is old information. And there needs to be an update of that before decisions are made, because there have been some improvements. There may have been degradations too, I don't know, but there certainly have been improvements. So, I think to expect even the 5-year time period that's mentioned in the draft ACO I don't think is realistic, and other people I've talked to don't think it's realistic to get a solution in place, or at least if it's the sewer solution. All of these things need to be taken into consideration. Finally, I would like to put in a plea that I've made to some people individually. I think that the sewer system here is as important as the school system. And I think it should be part of the tax base, paid for from the tax base. It should be deductible, which would make it also easier. And I would hope that all those of you who are involved in making policy would take that under serious consideration, even though it has political ramifications that are not particularly pleasant. But the other side of it is the people who are also taxpayers, many of them are being hit by these highly increased expenses. So those are my major considerations at this point, and I'll be back with the specifics when we get to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the boards. My name is Charlie Stott, and I'm with the Mattocket Homeowners Association. And our organization has spoken up, attended, I think, every Board of Selectmen's workshop on this issue, and spoken up at all of them and encouraged the board to consider the establishment of a citizen study committee to look at a number of questions relative to alternatives, and I think also to financing. I couldn't agree more with the previous speaker. I agree with Dan that sewer, like public education, like police and fire protection, is a public good, and that it benefits everyone, and that the burden should be shared equitably rather than on the shoulders of those who have chosen to live near Hither Creek, for example. I think it would be precipitous of us to act now or in the near future because of a number of questions that have been raised about this that could be grappled with by some sort of a citizens committee. And I'm pleased to say that I know at least some town officials have indicated that there's a willingness to form such a committee. But I think that, we need to look at TMDL. I don't think those numbers have been finalized. I think there's questions about, how old the data is on which the total maximum daily load has been based. If we're going through a revisitation of the CWMP, maybe decisions that are made should be informed by that process. I certainly think that we ought to look at, this document, for example, refers to financing that would be required, or payments into an escrow account by individuals whose systems are in failure. But I don't understand why, for example, those payments would have to be made in 2012 when 2017 or further down the line is when they would have the ability to connect to a sewer system, if a sewer system were in fact going to be built, as opposed to, a wastewater treatment plant were to be built, as opposed to some other kind of a system. I think we've got to look at the question of rebates for people who've invested tens of thousands of dollars to upgrade their systems, thinking that they're doing the right thing for the environment, only to find that maybe it's not good enough, and they're going to be required to connect to a sewer system anyway. I know that the Board of Health has considered, I don't know if they've adopted, the system of rebates or reductions in the connection fees, but that's just a small percentage of the money that would be expended by people who would be required to connect to sewer. And I think that some consideration ought to be given to a rebate or credit of some kind over a period of time towards the betterment and privilege fees that folks would have to pay in addition to the maybe $80,000 that they've already put into an IA system on their properties. So I think those are the kinds of questions that really need to be grappled with and shouldn't be done so in a rush to judgment manner, and ought to be done after due deliberation by a committee consisting of our peers who would make a recommendation to the two boards. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Charlie. My sense as well is that we have a couple of good, taking Chatham as an example, you know, ultimately what's going on in Chatham is going to be, you know, on a whole different end of the spectrum from what's going to happen here, and they've got to be coming up with some very clever ways of making sure the finances work. So taking a look at some of those other places. But, you know, ultimately this gets the ball rolling for us in terms of the discussion, and I think that, you know, in a very, very you know, maybe simplistic, maybe brilliant, I don't know, way, we've sort of jumped into the fray, and, you know, recognizing that none of us want to penalize anyone who's doing the right thing. We're going to just have to grapple with how that balance works. And so I appreciate this draft, and we will have further public discussion. I personally like the idea of the citizen committee, so maybe Richard and I can talk about how that may or may not work, but or maybe it's a board issue first.
Yeah, I know it's on Libby's list as well as we move into the CWMP process.
Right. So maybe it begins as a board of
we work it all together somehow.
together, right? So at any rate, I appreciate it. And anyone else with a comment for us today, sort of help inform us as we begin this conversation? Jeff?
My name is Jeff Blackwell. I'm a land surveyor, and we do a lot of septic system repair work. And one of the things that struck me right away is that the template assumptions on the cost for a conventional Title V system versus an IA system seem to me to be high. I'll give you an example. We just worked on a septic system repair in Mattocket. It was an IA system. It was a mounted system, which adds cost. And there was even a notice of intent required. And the total cost of that system was $37,000. My suggestion is that that costs are tracked. I think Richard is likely to see continuing applications for the grant money, in that a broader base of information is used perhaps than what has been used to date to come up with target figures for costs. My fear is that if figures like these are used, you're going to see a rush. I would recommend to a client now to go ahead and put in an IA system and not wait for this program. Obviously, the best sort of treatment and the best quality of water in the harbor watershed areas are for all houses to be connected to municipal sewer. Even an IA system still has, even although it's reducing undesirable effluent elements, I would hate to see everybody rushing to put in IA systems when a better solution would be the connection to the municipal sewer. And therefore, I think a development of accurate template numbers here is very important. It's just a thought.
Just to make sure I got this, so what you're saying is that if the template says you got to put 50,000 in escrow, just to pick a number.
55 is the number that's...
Well, whatever the number is, and you can build it for 25, people are going to say, I'll take my 25 and run right now, and I'll assume I get some kind of grandfathering if betterments come along later on, so I'm making a good financial decision.
Right.
So you want those two to track as close as is reasonable, or something like that?
There's always going to be systems that are extraordinarily expensive, like if retaining walls are required around the leach fields, for instance. But, you know, a figure that takes into account, you know, a mean cost plus maybe a little bit of a safety factor, I think will help everybody going forward.
Jeff might have missed my comment. He did come in a little late. But these numbers are certainly not arbitrary, but they are numbers that, without question, need to be adjusted. I mean, you've seen, I don't know if you were here for the...
I wasn't, I'm sorry.
Okay. I mean, we have two systems in Mattocket going in right now at $31,004. And actually, it's a system that's split between two houses. It's part of a duplex. And each house is paying $31,400. So that system costs $62,000. But there are systems that are certainly going in at a cheaper cost. And that's something that we now have the means to track. And so we will be tracking that, and that will become part of the deliberations when we look at the numbers for what people should be paying in. No question about it, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Those schedules were just put in there to show you how that escrow account would track too. In talking with Richard, we took two averages. So those were never meant to be your numbers. Your numbers will be very site-specific. Those were just put in there to show you how an escrow would track like that.
It's important that we had the comment because I think it clarifies for people even and more importantly. So if we're talking about a number that's 10, 20,000 more than expected, then that's a little scary, right? So I think it's great. Hand over here, yes. Giles.
I've agreed with a lot of the things here today, but I just, from a personal viewpoint.
Ken, can you state your name?
Down?
No, your name for the...
Oh, I'm sorry, Ken Giles from
Thanks.
Connecticut, yeah. Again, from a personal viewpoint, when I read this, it seems to say that everybody in Connecticut is going to be asked to start putting away this money, a couple $100 a month it looks like, into this fund. No matter what their status is on septic. Now, personally, I just spent I'm one of the first 8 people in there, and I'm starting to pay about $200 a month to pay off for what I just did. I put a IA system in, and I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do at this point. I could have gotten a repair, I think, and that would have been much cheaper, of course. But I think you really have to think of some way of people. There's going to be a lot of people in my, I'm not talking about me personally, I'm talking about a group of people like me. And I think there should be some way, because if it is that I now have to start paying another $200, that's, you've said 2 or 3 times you didn't want us to be paying twice for the same thing. And I think that's what that really comes out to be, is I'm going to be paying back the loan that we get through the grant, and then paying into this, and I think that's a hard hit.
It's sounding to me that when we go forward with this proposal, that we should as well define some of these other issues with respect to grandfathering and the like, because I do hear you. I think it's not something we want to see universally applied necessarily. Richard, am I right? Is it just for failed systems that this would be available? It's not going to be applied across the population out there, is it? Or
which is not going to be applied?
The setting up of this account and having the obligation to sort of pay into it. It is for a system that's basically already.
It's essentially for every Mattocket property owner.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
If they have a failed system,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Failed systems are the only systems that are going to be mandated to be corrected at this point.
But
all of you
everyone
folks out there that have had your system inspected and you find you're too close to groundwater, we're going to simply say, that's fine for now. We need to get a coordinated, defined approach to wastewater disposal in Mattocket before we put you in a position where you're going to change anything. But again, if your system's failed, we can't have that happening, because that's just going to flow right into the harbor. So we need to have that system corrected right now, unfortunately. But you're going to be able to correct it in a cheaper manner. You're not going to be put in a position where you may have to go to alternative technology. You may be put in a position where you can put your leach field within 2 feet of groundwater for the time being, knowing full well that whatever solution is determined, you are going to be subject to at the end of all of this.
But if this gentleman just put in an IA system and you're meeting Title V, this process is not for you.
Right.
You don't have a failed system. You've already repaired your system. So the town would be looking at you to say, could we grandfather you in and give him some time to use this system when sewers come in? This process is only for those properties that you have a failed system in the town under Title V law. You'd have to make a repair. The town is trying to help you either defer that repair or Band-Aid it at the least cost to you until sewers come in, so that you're not having to pay extra money.
And I just want to say, Rosemary, because we're not clear that sewers are coming in, right? Or if they're coming in universally. So it may be that your A1 system is going to be exactly what you need going forward, and when you're done, So, you know, again, it's going to take some conversations on our end in terms of what we're going to do in Mattocket first. And for those of you who've taken the initiative already, you know, not forget the grandfather. You may just be what it is we expect out there. So I just want to make that clear. Yeah, Dan? Sure.
I just heard two answers to the same question, one from Mr. Ray and one from this lady whose name I'm sorry, I don't know, as to whom this applies to, or the process would apply to. I heard Mr. Ray say it applies to every property owner in Mattocket, and I heard from the engineer, Rosemary, that it only applies to people who have systems that have failed for one reason or another. And
I'm sorry I used such a broad brush.
I think
well, what's the answer?
In the context of what's available, it's available to all the residents of Mattocket.
No, we're talking about the intent with the ACO.
Well, to back up a step, Richard can answer that with a slightly less broad brush, but we haven't defined anything yet as the start, so we're just starting the conversation.
I think the intent is to look at individuals with some form of failure associated with their system, which indeed is, quite frankly, a vast majority of the systems in Mattocket, particularly from Mattocket Road to Hither Creek.
But I think, just to be clear, I mean, what I'm hearing, and that's a reasonable question, it's failure of whatever the criteria happen to be that triggers this proposal if we get to implementing it. So if there's a system that has not failed, is functioning correctly, they're just keep on going the way they are. That's the way I hear it, until we get to the next step. But right now, this program would not apply to that person, and they're not required to undertake any repairs.
So, all clear? All right, question in the back, yep.
Chris Emery, Mattocket on Hither Creek. And I've been thinking about it since I read the paper and studying a little bit. Seems like we have this, the requirements that have been placed to improve our systems that any number of us have addressed, put in new systems, had them tested, and we haven't reached the completion of the program that we just had set up, designed to protect, improve the water quality. And we're already moving into what looked like everybody's got to hook up, and you got to pay this price. That's, I mean, the way it read, and it didn't seem fair, and it didn't seem like we're waiting for the complete results of the last program that we designed that hasn't been followed through on by the private parties and by the town in making sure that the rest of the people do complete their systems, and that I think that we should do that first, or consider that, not just okay, we're gonna stop where we were. Now we're gonna go on to the next program. That's one point.
If I may answer that,
Yes.
The estuaries program for Mattocket is complete. We have the TMDL for Mattocket, and it's substantial. And
I'm not familiar with all the
the total
acronyms.
maximum daily loading for Mattocket Harbor for nutrient loading has been determined as to what it is right now. We have to find a way to reduce that number, or you will witness a further degradation of Hither Creek and Mattocket Harbor. This is the means to the end. What now are we going to do to get near or get below that nutrient loading number for Hither Creek and Mattocket Harbor? We know what it is. We now need to find out